Welcome to This Week in Health IT, where we amplify great thinking to propel healthcare forward. My name is Bill Russell, Healthcare CIO coach and creator of This Week in Health IT, a set of podcasts, videos, and collaboration events dedicated to developing the next generation of health leaders. This episode and every episode since we started the COVID-19 series has been sponsored by Sirius Healthcare. Now we're exiting that series, but Sirius has stepped up to be a weekly sponsor of the show through the end of the year. Special thanks to Sirius for supporting the show's efforts during the crisis and beyond. Clip Notes is live and it is available. If you can't listen to every show, but you want to know what was on the show, you can sign up for Clip Notes. You get a one-paragraph summary, key moments in bullet point format with timestamps, and 1 to 4 video clips from the show. Great way to stay current yourself, share insights with your team, just get the email, shoot it over to them. It's a great way also for you to maintain your commitment to developing your team during these extraordinary times. Sign up at any episode page or on the website, or send a note to clipnotes, CLIPNOTES, at thisweekinhealthit.com, and it will kick off an automated workflow that'll get you an email that you can sign up. So our mission at This Week in Health IT is twofold: to amplify great thinking to propel healthcare forward, and to develop the next generation of health IT leaders. For the first 180 episodes, we did the show with no outside financial support, and that changed in the fall of last year. We made a conscious decision to find sponsors who shared our vision, sponsors who would help fund our growth and the development of the show with new offerings and content. We have a great group of founding channel sponsors, and we have since opened it up to individual show sponsors. This is where we go in depth with a company or a solution, and we ask questions as if I were sitting across the table from them as the CIO vetting their solution. We only do these shows with organizations that I feel comfortable with once we've done an initial interview with them. I have turned down a couple following the initial conversation. The ones that we do, the ones that I bring you, are organizations or solutions that I believe will be worth your time to explore. Today's show is with RSA, a security firm that is part of Dell's group of companies. We're going to explore how organizations are securing the perimeter as the perimeter really changes pretty dramatically over the last couple of months. Here's our show. Our workforce is in flux. COVID really moved a lot of our people around, but that really wasn't the start of it. The workforce used to be made up predominantly of full-time employees working on site, but that has given way to remote workers and really specialists for hire. We also have business associates that help to get the work done and really extend our risk vectors even further. Healthcare is pushing beyond the four walls for delivery, and that creates even more complexities. The question we want to explore today is, how do we manage the risk of this new and emerging dynamic workforce? And so today we have Tim Norris, RSA Solutions Strategist, here to join us. Tim, how's it going?
It's great. Thanks for having me.
So you're working out of the house. You probably worked out of the house before, I would assume.
Yeah, I would spend a couple days a week at home, but certainly life is different with a 10-month-old and a 3.5-year-old running around while I try to work. So yeah, that makes things fun.
Wow. So what's that like during COVID? I assume you've spent a lot of time with the kids.
Yeah, with two working parents, it's a lot of juggling. I have a meeting here, you have a meeting there. Where can I take the kids? I got to record a podcast. Can you get them out of the house, kind of thing? So yeah, it's been fun. It's interesting to be able to be home and spend kind of that time, especially with a baby. But yeah, certainly presents its own challenges.
Well, congratulations, and that's fantastic. By the way, we've had kids on the podcast. We've had dogs on the podcast. We've had workers come by behind windows during the podcast. I think we've had just about everything I could think of. So,
well, forewarning, I think the UPS guy is just pulling up, and my dog's staring out the window in front of me. So we might get a visit from Miss Birdie here in a few.
Any story behind the pictures? So a lot of people are going to be listening to this on the podcast, but you have a collage of great pictures behind you. From it looks more artistic than family vacation. So, any story behind that?
Well, I like to fancy myself an amateur photographer. Focus on amateur, and I think Photoshop can do a lot better than what I capture in the raw. But yeah, no, these are just some photos that my wife and I have taken on our various trips, whether it be safari in Kenya or across the Great Wall or North Schweinstein in Germany. So.
Wow, yeah, and it's not your typical the two of you standing in front of something. That's the reason I commented on the the black and whites and those kind of things. But I assume if I have you on the show in 3 years, I'm going to see pictures of you and the kids in front of those same places.
For sure. Now, throughout the rest of the house, there's the pictures of us. My wife and I both are in security spaces, and this faces our front window. So we're like, no pictures of kids and family. We don't want people seeing. So yeah, we're a little maybe security paranoid, I guess.
I remember when we had a firm come in and they did a social media analysis of all of our executives, and they actually came back to us and said, "Hey, you guys share too much," and they produced a document for each one of us, telling us how we should really cull the information that we were putting out on social media, and even some of the connections that we should take away. Like, we were connected to other family members, and they're like, "Look, hey, that could be utilized as a way for people to take advantage, not necessarily of you as an executive for the health system, but they could take advantage of your nephews and your whatever to get in." I'd never even thought of that. That's like second level thinking in terms of security, I guess.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's jump into this topic. I'm going to start with a generic question. Talk a little bit about the risks that an organization, or really that your organization is seeing out there in the market today with regard to this changing workforce and the dynamics around it.
Yeah, so I think from a security and IT perspective, there's really three major risks that we're seeing. I mean, obvious is the cyber threat surface has really dramatically grown. The bad guys, know how to cash in on a good pandemic, right? And so we're very aware of the targets and sort of the expanded surface. Everyone works from home. We're all using new technologies to try to just get our work done. And so that certainly opened up a lot more opportunities. I think also you've seen, in where we've literally put people, entire almost organizations in a remote posture almost overnight. Security is now trying to catch up on a lot of those cases. So there's certainly more vulnerabilities across our environments. And then I think you look at things like phishing. That's nothing new, but the context and how the bad actors are using that to lure in so those unsuspecting users. And in fact, spoofing and leveraging a lot of our well-known healthcare brands and government entities, to try and capture credential information or inject malware. I think is interesting that, I read Google reports. So in January, they counted somewhere around 149,000 active phishing sites. But by May, there was 840,000. And largely those were focused on COVID-based premises, so PPE and those kind of things. So a lot of activity in trying to steal credentials and inject malware. And as a result, we've seen definitely a large increase in ransomware. And ransomware is really nothing new from a healthcare perspective. We're seeing it across all facets of the industry. You see headlines as early, as late as last week around nation states hacking into research facilities. So there's a wide array of sort of direct impacts from a pandemic perspective. Related, I think, is also, we talk about the remote workforce. That certainly has increased our security risk. I think it was yesterday, or the day before, I was reading a study that looked at the difference of cybersecurity between a corporate network and a home network. And home networks, they found they were able to measure roughly about 3.5 times more likely to have at least one form of malware on them. So you think about that, and your entire workforce is at home and using their own Wi-Fi routers and various states of password 123 as their password, or maybe no passwords at all. Certainly expands the opportunity for the bad guys. And the third area, I think, is a direct result of COVID and how we're adapting, is the rapid adoption of technology. You think just telehealth as an example. Telehealth wasn't new, but the massive expansion almost overnight to be able to provide services to patients, vitally important. But navigating the security vulnerabilities and trying to understand the various platforms, and also data security and data privacy issues has been a challenge. And so we're seeing organizations start to address those pieces.
You give us 3 areas. So yeah, we at the peak of COVID, if there was at the peak during New York City's peak of COVID, we had a conversation, and we were talking about how all the attacks, all the phishing attacks, had really coalesced around healthcare. And it was really one of the first times in history that everything had coalesced around one topic across the entire internet. It was pretty crazy. In fact, my wife and I were talking last night about it. What's happening now is phone calls, very sophisticated phone calls to people, essentially saying, "Hey, look, we're doing contact tracing, and you're one of the people that has been in contact with somebody who has had COVID-19. And so we are calling to get your test scheduled for COVID. So what we need is we need some information, we need a credit card, we need whatever. And it all sounds very official, very
Yeah.
creative. In fact, my wife was commenting, it's like, if these people would turn their energies towards good, the world would be so much better. These are really creative from a technology perspective, from a psychology perspective, sociology perspective. I mean, these are smart people who are creating these pretty sophisticated attacks to just prey on people.
Absolutely. Even you look at, I've been not a victim, but I've had a couple come across my cell phone, just text messages. They look official from, doctor, hey, you've been this, hit whatever, hit the link, hit something to reply, all knowing that there's malicious stuff behind it. But it looks real. They've gotten really sophisticated.
So I'm going to dive into some healthcare, some health IT related topics in a second here, but I want to start because you talked about the work from home and the network at home. So whose responsibility is it to shore that up? Do you think? I mean, if I'm the CIO for the health system, am I giving that work to my network team? Am I giving it to my security team? Am I giving it to maybe even to my VDI team? Who am I giving it to say, hey, look, we need to, are we sending people out to run scans on people's home networks, their home computer? How are we thinking about those things?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's a little bit of all of the above, right? I mean, as far as who do I give that to, it's kind of everyone's responsibility, and honestly, we have to do a sort of a much better job at educating our own employee base because if you're a large healthcare organization with 100,000 employees, like you're not sending someone out to 100,000 houses, right? So I think that there's an education and awareness piece with sort of very specific, given the wide variety of sort of technical savviness of our employee base and users, that's important. I also think of it, it sort of goes to a topic of you hear a little bit about identity being the perimeter or whatever, and I think there's a lot of credence to that because as we're accessing applications, whether it's directly to the cloud, some SaaS based EHR or any of that kind of stuff, like who we are and involve making sure we know who those users are and if they're entitled to use that um, application and what they can do, and also sort of what are they doing with the data. It sort of puts the onus right at the access point, and how do we make sure we're really protecting that data. So that's you know that answer. And I do think it's an all of the above
Yeah.
kind of strategy, and awareness is a critical component. Working for we're part of Dell, and I think it's about every once a couple times a week. There's a, hey, did you do this, or hey, did you think about that? Do you have have you changed your password on this? And that's just sort of that constant drip of things to help bring that awareness to there's 225,000 Dell employees that are working on that.
Yeah. So identity is the new perimeter, and I want to come back to that, and I really want to talk about identity and access management projects. I just want to hang at this home network thing real quick here because it's interesting to me. I think that's a new thing that all these CIOs are sort of looking at. And when you look at the cost of maybe putting something at the home, and if we're telling people, hey, we want you to work out of the home at this point and moving forward, does it make sense to buy that $300 device that that sits at the home network that has security and malware protection and all that stuff that you're updating just like you would update the computer and the security functions on the computer? I mean, do you think that organizations will start to make investments around that? Because the other thing about my home network is I'm not the only one on the network,
Yep.
right? So it's me and my kids and my wife and just a ton of devices. And so even if I'm being safe on this computer in this place, my daughter's in the next room. Who knows what she's doing on her computer?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. You even look at like devices where people with the BYOD type of environment, in some cases, like the home computer is also just being shared. So it's not just the work computer you have; it's the computer that the kids are doing their homework on and everything else. So yeah, that certainly creates additional challenges. And I think personally, I do think you'll see a little bit of a shift as we focus on work from home in how do we get more control over those devices. I think you said identity. I think there's scanning and sort of endpoint detection becomes a lot more important as we focus on sort of that detection and response at the endpoint. Because we're not going to be able to touch every device that's touching on that network. My 15 Alexas I have around the house, that's just, we're never going to get to that point. So it's being able to detect those threats at that endpoint as quickly and remediate them as quick as possible.
Yeah. So identity is the new perimeter. I think I heard that for the first time. I guess I got to think about that. Maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and maybe I was late to the game. But it sounds like one of those phrases that should mean a lot more to me than it does. What does this mean to me, and how does it play out in healthcare IT?
Yeah, so I mean, I think when you look at how decentralized our work lives are today, no longer does everything sit behind a nice and tidy little firewall that keeps all the bad guys out. We're, accessing information all over the place, private clouds, public clouds, maybe behind the VPN or direct to third parties in the SaaS application kind of world. So there isn't this single entry point. And you also think about, just the data exchange and data sharing, especially in healthcare. We think of the Cures Act and sort of the requirements that are coming in there. Data is crossing a bunch of different platforms. And so when you look at who's accessing that data, it's really kind of the front gate. It kind of, I don't want to say replaces the firewall, because it certainly doesn't, but becomes almost as important or more important to be able to protect based on who's accessing. Are they legit? Is it really who they say they are? Are they supposed to have access? And then ultimately, what are they doing with that data once they get in? Once we're looking inside the session and correlating those things together. It's across the wide environments that we have and the many environments we have. And I think, identity is really the critical factor there. And you see that, I think, have played out, like you said, over the past few years, becoming much more and more important, where things like multi-factor authentication aren't just for the CEO and a couple of people who maybe sit in finance and some other places, company-wide type of environments. I think specifically for healthcare, it plays out in a couple of ways. Access to electronic health records or even telehealth, physicians, doing work at home or wherever they may be, certainly opens up more opportunities from a how to service our patients, but also making sure we have really clean ways of determining who's actually accessing that, both from a compliance, but really from thinking of it more from a security standpoint. In again, my opinion, healthcare, but maybe even definitely some other organizations and industries, identity controls have really been driven out of a need for compliance, because it's required, and not necessarily it's like, yeah, password's good enough. But now, as identity is really the front line of defense, it has to sort of change in culture and how we manage and orchestrate identity governance, lifecycle management, authentication throughout sort of the various facets of an organization, right? Just sharing a password or having password 123 be for an entire, operating wing to access anything, like, isn't viable anymore. But I also think it means, from a security and IT perspective, we have to, and as a vendor even, we have to make it as easy and as frictionless as possible for those users to be able to gain that access, as we sort of put it as at the front of a security control.
Yeah, it's security is getting much more granular, right? So it works off the identity. I think that, one of the things, I remember having a conversation with somebody, and it was about, we had blocking of certain sites at our health system. Normal software, it looked at different websites and it blocked those websites. Now, obviously, you have to be more liberal at a health system because you're doing research, you're doing some of those things. But at the end of the day, somebody was like, why are we blocking anything? And, why do you even care what I'm doing? And what it led to was a conversation that just opened that person's eyes, where I'm like, we know everything that's going on this network. Like, we know what folders you're in. We know what things you access. We know what email you open. We know what email you send. And I think some employees still today are under the impression that, what I do on my computer is really my own business. But the reality is, we are required to in healthcare, and we're required to in other industries, to know what's going on our network in order to protect the assets that are on our network. Because a lot of the attacks are really exfiltration attacks that happen as a result of our employees. So we are watching that stuff on an ongoing basis. Do you find employees still struggle with that concept, or is everyone really starting to just come to grips with the fact that that is the case, that we're required to, and we are watching just about everything that's going on the network?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So I'll give you my personal opinion on that. I think it's a mixed bag. I think it's also, and I hate to say it, but maybe a generational kind of issue as well. I think the millennial generation that's in the workforce, I think has a lot less expectation of privacy in sort of a work environment, and kind of understand that fact. But maybe some of your older workers have more of that. They haven't lived in a world where they've put all their information out on the internet and kind of given up a lot of privacy. So I think there's a mixed bag of what that expectation is. I think it's really important for the organization, healthcare or whoever, to be crystal clear and transparent with their employees about that. And in most cases, in every handbook and everything you see, it's there. But um, I, I, it's part of being
Tim,
in
are
a
you
digital
saying
world.
people aren't reading their handbook?
I mean, I might be guilty of that too. So, but
No.
at the older end of the millennial generation, I can kind of say that, yeah, I expect coming in the security world, I guess I'm a little more exposed to it, but every keystroke I take and mouse click I do, I expect somebody's watching it.
All right, you're going to have to help me. One of the worst projects I ran as a CIO was our identity and access management project. It was an area that I thought, oh, this seems easy enough. You need to make sure that as people come into the company or leave the company, that you are assigning them the correct rights. You need to make sure that none of the rights grow over time beyond what they should. You need to automate as much as possible. We were getting a ridiculous number of phone calls to our service desk around identity access management. We were also, quite frankly, we were way behind. It was taking us, when I first heard this, I was horrified. It was taking us almost 2 weeks to stand up a new employee, and I'm like, how can this be in today's day and age? So we did what everybody else did. We went out, we looked at what was available in the market. We talked to other health systems, and we kicked off our IAM project. Some of the things I may have overlooked. I mean, we can get into some of those things, but I guess my question is, there's so much of this that I think health IT, and myself included, that I thought, well, if we just get the right technology, this is one of those areas where I fell into this trap. We just get the right technology in place, we're going to be good. But there's an awful lot more to it than just throwing technology at this solution, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say if I had a nickel for every time I heard that the IAM project was, a pain in the what, like I'd be a rich man. But I think for me, it boils down to really two things when we talk about the IAM project. And to your point, it's technology and people. And even in the technology, I think it's about the approach. So many times have I seen organizations approach identity governance or IAM as really just a provisioning problem, right? Coming at it from the help desk. Hey, we got all these bajillions of requests and it's overwhelming, and how do we solve it? And certainly that is absolutely important and part of the drive and the need of any identity program. But most organizations, or a lot of organizations I've seen, kind of get stuck because they don't set up the right governance processes and governance program before they start automating all of these provisioning and deprovisioning components. And so what that really leads to is, yay, we've automated a bunch of stuff, but it's still bad stuff, and I don't have visibility into it. And I can't tell if it's really appropriate levels of access for a user. Are there access violations or SOX or segregation of duties? Like all of those kinds of things. It becomes even more complicated because we've just made it easier and faster to put more stuff.
All right, so Tim, help me fix this, right? So
Yeah.
I didn't set up governance correctly. Do I have to set up another? Do you know how many governance organizations parts that we are a part of in healthcare? Do I have to stand up its own governance organization? Can this be a part of another governance organization's purview? Is it just IT, or is it other parts of the organization? What are we looking at?
Yeah. So I think there's a technology piece, and then there's the people side of that one. So yeah, a lot of these tools provide a governance platform, the ability to kind of, once you establish the right rules, which I think from your risk organization and your IT, which you already probably have these rules and policies established, it can be applied in the technology. So I think that's it. Kind of the easy part is that it's not like a whole standing up of a brand new team and all this kinds of stuff, within some um, governance org. You can just, it's applying the right policies and being able to then have visibility to the tool to be able to look at those policies. So, example, if I have visibility to every entitlement in my organization, even if it's just my most critical applications, that's the first step, right? And being able to see that, and then I can start to look at, are there people who have elevated or privileged access, and be able to sort and slice and dice to start to apply the right remediation. So I don't think it has to be overwhelming, and I think you can take it step by step. But getting everything in one place as a visibility factor is first in mind, and then you can start applying the right policies. And then once you've got that kind of there, then automation is almost easier, and you're automating things that are going to be more in line with where you want from a process perspective.
All right. So, excess rights was a recurring problem as well. So, for the most part, what we want to do is be able to set and forget. But people move jobs, they take on new responsibilities, they leave old ones. What's the best way to ensure that we keep people at the right level of rights across the entire enterprise?
Yeah, it's a big challenge for everyone, and I think too many times a lot of focus on giving people access, but not enough focus on how to taking it away when it's appropriate to do so. I can't tell you the number of conversations with organizations I've had where when we've done like an initial scan of identity as maybe part of a point of reference for a customer, we'll see that there's so many of these employees that have left and still have access to things even in the system, and it's just amazing. We're not connecting the dots, both from an HR perspective, but also not doing a good job at enabling those business users and business owners to really take ownership and certify the access there. We typically do these access certification rituals, again, driven primarily by compliance. And it's so overwhelming for the business user, dumping a big spreadsheet of a bunch of data in and saying, hey, I need you by Monday to tell me which access I should take away. It's just not reasonable for these business users to take in and put the level of time into it. So I think from how do we kind of solve this problem or start to evolve, I think it's good partnerships between your HR and IT identity types of teams to be able to have a free flow of that information, so it is more seamless as people say leave the organization. But also, as people are acquiring, doing new projects, need new access, putting more onus on the business owner, but making it easy to prioritize access review. So Tim, who sits in a solutions kind of role, why is he accessing financial information? Maybe I needed that for a project, but being able to highlight that on a very sort of continuous basis to my my manager or whatever, to be able to say, yep, that's still good, is important, without dumping a spreadsheet of 1,000 records of Tim's entitlements and saying, "Hey, tell me what he needs," which you still find in a lot of organizations are still pumping data in spreadsheets and asking people to do stuff, which just isn't reasonable.
Maybe this is experience from a while ago, because I haven't been a CIO for about 3 years now. But the one of the things is we had to do an audit for licensing, and we did sort of an Active Directory dump and took a look at just the number of Active Directory accounts, and it was way more than the number of employees we had. And as we sort of went through that, we have a ton of business associates who are accessing that, and also contractors who are accessing our Active Directory to get access to different resources throughout the health system. Are there best practices around third-party access of the healthcare systems?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, aligning sort of your third party identity risk as a part of your overall third party risk management program is maybe a novel idea, but it's critically important, especially when you think of identity as kind of that primary component of a security program. And then I think being able to, simply say it, treat the access as it is your own employees, right? Someone has to own that. Someone owns that contractor relationship. Somebody should be certifying that, yep, that's the right person, and that they really should have access to those types of materials. And being able to look for any kind of anomalous activity that's happening in a third party, especially being able to flag those in a way within your identity governance platform is I think critical component to give it a little extra special care. On the other side, I think from when they actually at the point of accessing things, applying more of a risk-based authentication solution. So you're not just looking at kind of a rigid on or off, do I have this code or not? But you're looking at behaviors and sort of less static type of signals and look more dynamically so that you can, again, these people aren't sitting in your building, they're sitting wherever, and they're, your contractors or third party providers that, you want to pay a little more extra attention to. So I think looking at a risk-based approach, I think, treating them as if they're your own employee and we've talked a little bit about, but really streamlining that business user experience so they can actually manage what identity and what access has been granted in a more efficient way are sort of the two of the.
So you're distributing the visibility into access out to the business owners. What I mean, have the tools progressed? Are we seeing like real time visibility into those connections, or is it more retrospective of this is what's been accessed and this is what they have the ability to access?
Yeah, so I think the tools definitely have come a long way, right? You're seeing a lot of use of sort of risk engines and analytics models that are automating some of the anomaly detection for either the business user or even the administrator on the identity or IT side to be able to detect things and identify things that don't look quite right and be able to flag them you know, before something happens. And looking at it based on a business risk, if it's bad access to this isn't as relevant now because we're all at home, but the intranet and the food menu in the cafeteria, like, okay, we'll fix it at some point. But, the employee health record system, right, is a whole different level of risk. So there's I think you're seeing a lot of advancement. And I know even in our own solution of advancing those models to be able to flag those components. On the enforcement side, so the actual authentication, I know one of the areas that we've spent a fair amount of time in looking at is combining, bringing identity into the SOC. And so looking at threat intelligence or threat detection and response platforms and being able to combine that with identity intelligence and identity risk as we see, potential security threat come in, how do we help use identity as an enforcement tool and sort of linking the two in a very automated way and really kind of in that real time capacity. So I really think you're seeing a lot of advancement in that space.
That's fantastic. I read an article once, and it pointed out that most breaches in healthcare originate really internally. Now, a majority of them are user error, right? So some configuration issue, some aspect of something, and so it's caused by user error. But the exfiltration number to me was kind of surprising. The number of our employees that are actually, for whatever reason, acting in a way that is counter to the interests of the organization. What kind of tools or practices have we utilized to address, that specific, the exfiltration of data from a perceived good actor within our network?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think of the insider threats, a lot of times when we talk about it, it automatically people go, oh, it's the Snowden. He's the guy trying to steal stuff. And like you said, in most cases, it's the careless coworker who's unintentionally doing something, who's misusing a resource, I mean, clicking a link in a phishing email, right? Who's injecting risk.
We had people that were like, oh, you mean I can't share stuff on that? On Dropbox was my favorite back in the day, was not secured. And they're just like, oh yeah, I'm sharing stuff with that doctor through Dropbox. I'd be like, whoa. Yeah. And they're like, what do you mean? It's real easy. You just sign up for Dropbox. You take it from our secure network store, and we just move it out to Dropbox, and the physician has access to it because they can't get to our network. It's like, well, there's another way to do that. Anyway.
Yeah, and so I think looking at sort of all of the share files and sort of the unstructured data, there are definitely tools, even from an identity standpoint, to understand who has access to those types of file shares and different things, whether it be a Dropbox now or other kinds of stuff. I think those are some important tools. Obviously, some data loss DLP type of solutions provide some support there, is to see where assets are actually being moved to and from and who's doing what. But in the end, I think there's kind of two components here. One is the awareness and the training that has to happen, and it has to happen across the wide um, swath of employees that we have, and to let them try to make it real, make them understand why that's not a good idea, and why maybe they should ask a question before they just open up a Dropbox account and do. Because ultimately, they have the best intentions. They're not trying to do something malicious, but they're putting things at risk. And I think we have to do a better job at bite sizing, making that training more impactful than just here's your 20-minute security awareness training and video that you watched and click the button that certify you said it. The other piece I think is also, it goes back to a little bit of an access management standpoint of really making sure you're adhering to that least privileged type of access controls, and so that people don't have access to things they shouldn't have and can't do things with very sensitive data that they shouldn't, such as throw it on a whatever kind of share that they want to do.
Yeah. Well, Tim, thanks for your time. We're going to put a white paper up on the website that people can download if they want some more information. Are there any other ways that people can get more information or on some of the things we talked about today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say, first of all, go to the website, rsa.com. I would say check out our webinar section. There's a couple of recent webinars around disruptions in healthcare that you might find interesting that span beyond sort of the identity conversation we had. So I would say check that out. And there's a lot of great content specifically talk to healthcare IT across the RSA website. So I would certainly send folks there.
So I'm going to give you the last word, and it's essentially I'm going to get a do-over. I'm going to get hired tomorrow as a CIO, hypothetically, and I messed up our last IAM project, and I approached it all wrong. How should I approach it? I want to give you the last word to sort of set me up for success moving forward.
Yeah, so I think the first thing you need to look at is being able to have that full visibility first, right, across all of your assets, all of your applications, all of your environments, and who's doing what, who has access with what. I think without that visibility at sort of a fine level, I think a lot of this just becomes an automation IT program, and it sort of defeats some of the purpose of managing a security, identity first security program. I also say finding ways to help get identity more ingrained in the SOC, as identity is kind of that frontline defense from the attack standpoint. Being able to connect the dots there, I think, is an important piece and an evolution that many organizations, as they mature, are starting to bring in.
Fantastic. Tim, again, thanks for your time. It's fantastic. I look forward to seeing the family pictures at some point in the future. I guess I won't, because you're a security guy. I'll never see the family pictures behind you on a video podcast.
Maybe if I sit in a different room by then. We'll sit in the family room where there's lots of babies and, kids everywhere.
Fantastic. Hey, thanks again for your time. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
That's all for this week. If you want more information about RSA or any of the solutions we talked about, feel free to hit the website, or you can shoot me a note at bill@thisweekinhealthit.com. Special thanks to our channel sponsors, VMware, Starbridge Advisors, Galen Healthcare, HealthLyrics, Sirius Healthcare, ProTalent Advisors, and Health Next for choosing to invest in developing the next generation of health leaders. If you made it this far, you're a fan of the show, please do me a favor and send an email to one other person and let them know that you're benefiting from the show and that you think it would be valuable for them to spend their time with us as well. You can do that, or sign up for clip notes and just shoot them clip notes on the shows you think are valuable to them. We'll do our best to honor your support by producing great content with industry leaders to propel healthcare forward. Please check back on Tuesday for news, Wednesday for solutions, and Friday for interviews with industry influencers. Thanks for listening. That's all for now.